This is Changeling the podcast.
Welcome to Changeling the Podcast. Come for the glamour, stay for the vibes. I'm your host, Josh, and with us is your other host, Puka. Say hi, Puka.
Yeah, hi.
What are we talking about tonight, Puka?
We are tearing down the gates to Arcadia again. It's time for the second resurgence and the return of the Lost Houses as we go into Book of the Lost Houses. Or Book of Lost Houses.
Is this really the second resurgence? I can't remember. I can't keep track of it.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, the she just keep showing up.
Yep. So this was a very art house book.
Peak art house.
Do you have what year it was published in? Because lying.
It was published in 2001, although the copyright says 1999. I'm pretty confident that's correct.
And it has a bunch of different writers, which you can really tell. And
which I can understand sometimes why a book written by committee, they don't spell out who wrote what, but in this instance, I'm kind of glad.
Yeah, each chapter specifically. Well, there's two Scathach writers. There's Christopher Howard with additional material by Adrian Simmons as House Scathach, Carla Haller as House Varich, D. McKinney, House Daireann, Krister Mickle, House Aesin, and then Peter Woodsworth, House Beaumayn. And Nikki and Jackie team developing. And Chris Howard did some of the art too.
Yes, for his own chapter.
Yep.
He's a role-playing polymath.
Mm-hmm. So should we get into the introduction?
Yes, brief as it is.
Uh-huh. So it starts with, in 1969, a sudden implosion of glamour. So I just wanted to point, it should be an explosion of glamour unless something's really weird about the resurgence that I'm not aware of. But
something I couldn't remember. In C20, do they make the case that these houses came back in the Evanescence or that they had been there since the resurgence in 1969?
I forgot to check. Yeah, I don't remember. I guess we'll wait till we get to our C20 book.
Yeah.
Which we're not that many books away from at this point.
It's true.
Yeah. And we get a very brief summary of stuff that happened in Concordia. And then, it says a bunch of newcomers have returned. I don't know when they were supposed to have returned, how long before this book's written. That's another, but we'll get that in specific chapters.
I think it's supposed to be, they basically came back with the denizens in 1999.
Yeah. So is this book supposed to be set in 2001? That's my other question. There's some chapters that make it seem like they've been back for like at least a decade. So it's...
Yeah, and as we've seen with the other books of houses, I think every single one has, of course, at least a few of our house stayed behind.
Yeah.
It's like...
Yeah.
But what is time even to a she passing through the dreaming? So then we start with some art of a very... This horse in the opening chapter art is making me uncomfortable. It's giving like come hither vibes. I don't know what's up with that. But,
also, he's really long.
Yeah, it's a long horse.
Yeah.
So House Beaumayn.
Yeah, House Beaumayn. So it starts with an email, I think.
Yep, containing presumably a PDF. I like that. Given how many times we see the device of like the faux handwriting font on a parchment style background, I like the idea that this is actually a PDF that they have formatted to look like that.
Yep. Which that was hard to read the story here, especially on PDF, which I was reading it on. Also, I want to mention this. I've been saying before, when re-downloading from DriveThruRPG, there's like much better quality PDFs for things back from when I first got it in 2016.
Is this not one of them?
No, this is terrible.
Oh, man. Alas. This PDF, or whatever it is, contains the Marvisual manuscript, which is a hastily written history of the house dating from just before the Shattering, written by a member of the house who was about to be exiled. And it gives their deep history, explaining how the Gwydion found the young warrior Jalindrel in the dreaming. He had defeated a monster with prophecy and daring do, and then rode with Gwydion as an exemplary paladin seer, went on to found the house, and then they went on the first crusade for some reason.
Yeah. It's pretty late, actually, I feel like, for house founding. And then that was supposed to be before the Sundering?
Right. So after the manuscript, it explains that the page is missing. That explains what happened from the end of the Sundering into the Shattering, which was while on First Crusade, the house's leader, Duke Daireann, met this issue named Zubaida, who led him to become obsessed with the Iron Road. And that's a path to Fey liberation that involves dying by cold iron. So he founded the Harbingers of Exodus to collect iron and use it. And then the discovery that they were transporting iron led to the house being imprisoned in Arcadia even before the Shattering, because they were sworn to secrecy about this kind of internal heresy.
Mm-hmm.
But it has this vibe of like, maybe this was all a Shadow Court plot kind of thing.
Yep.
So,
although, yeah, they're like, who is this?
yeah, who is this Zubaida? Who is this issue anyway?
Yeah, well, the book confuses me because it talks about how the house was founded, and then they went on the Crusades, and then the Sundering happened, and the Crusades were like in 10 something. Like,
Yeah. Well, it would have been right as the Sundering was about to turn into the Shattering, I suppose.
okay, because I thought they were saying the Sundering happened like after the Crusades started.
No,
And
no,
that
no.
just does my head in. Okay.
Then there were these two brothers who took up leadership of the house but disagreed about the dark nature of the visions that they were receiving and how they should continue into their destiny. So they split into two factions. And it was a struggle pitting kin against kin that lasted until the Shattering. So presumably one group was transporting iron and got the entire house punished, and the other group was sworn not to reveal it,
Mm-hmm.
reveal the reason for it. Something like that.
Yeah.
It gets tricky when you've got prophecy involved and oaths.
And the Iron Road, which is like the Bright Road, but when you're killed with cold iron,
Yeah.
you come back.
So they were imprisoned. There was a thing called the Call of Silence instituted to prevent other Shi from remembering who they are, which is very convenient for introducing a new house into the game.
Oh, I missed that. I thought that was just supposed to be. They're just a funny word for the mists. Okay.
It was a great ritual enacted by the Eiluned, according to the manuscript.
Oh.
Except those in Arcadia remembered who they were. So they were.
I had trouble reading the manuscript, so I'll have to.
Especially on PDF, it can't be easy.
Mm-hmm.
They expect that they've been returned from Arcadia because they are the best warriors against the Thalane. And now that the Dark Resurgence, or whatever it was called at this point, I mean, it's easy enough to transpose it into the Evanescence. But yes, they are back to stop the Fomorians and their followers from doing what they do.
Mm-hmm. That's a theme throughout this book. None of these houses like the Fomorians at all. Like, I mean, nobody likes them, but they're extra hating them.
Yeah, another theme throughout this book is that they're all like sorcerer warriors or seer warriors. That's like recurring.
No, one of them are herbalist warriors.
Yeah, paladin seers in this case.
Mm-hmm.
They have a code of ethics called Jalendrel's Code. There's also a note that Jalendrel, in his fight with the monster, or whatever, was it like one of his hands got scorched and blackened or something? So they call them Jalendrel of the Good Hand, and that's Beaumayn. Although I think it should actually be Belma. Jalendrel's code is honor the future and remember its secrets. So accept prophecies. Do not burden others with the future lest it break them. So don't share your visions.
Unless you have to.
Unless you have to.
Yeah.
And then accept your destiny and leave others to theirs. Which I think is probably the most interesting part of it, because like when the Gwydion encountered Jalendrel in the dreaming, he was sitting and watching this village get massacred, and they were like, why aren't you helping? And he was waiting for this giant dragon to burst forth. And everyone was like, a dragon. But because he was like ready for it, he was able to slaughter it and then prevent much more death.
Mm-hmm.
So like it's that old chestnut of bad destiny or worse destiny.
Yeah, and his hand got messed up by trying to mess with that.
That was it. That was it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they talk about their house Blazon, describing where it comes from, and it is the Eye of Baelor, as it's called, or the Red Star in Vampire, basically.
Purple Star in the actual presentation of it. And I think it's freaking cool, I have to say. It's very similar to the Discordian, 8-point. Obviously, they tend to be Seelie. I'd say probably more than almost any house, maybe too much for their own good.
Mm-hmm.
And this note about their sort of refusal to talk about what they've seen, or like, I guess, their perspective on the way fate is shaking out. It's like they take their duty extremely seriously, and that duty includes preserving destiny, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
The few unseelie in the house tend to get there because they get depressed after troubling visions.
Yeah. And this gets into, we'll get into what the other houses like, but here they're talking about like what they think the Seelie code, or at least the unreliable narrator of this book or whatever,
Mhm.
like what they think the Seelie court and the unseelie court represents. And it's like, that's an interesting take on it and not the same as the other
Yeah.
house.
Regardless of their occasional unseeliness, it seems like not even their unseelie would have anything to do with the Shadow Court.
Mm-hmm.
They're adamantly against it.
Yep. And then they have factions. Well, a faction,
Yes.
which are those harbingers of Exodus. This let's do everyone a favor and kill people with cold iron because it'll make them happy.
Yeah. Thankfully, they're a small minority of the house.
Yeah, but they're not allowed to tell anyone outside the house about them.
Yeah. For reasons unclear, honestly.
Yeah, because I mean, there's apparently non-house members who have started joining that group. So it's
Yeah.
I guess the prophecy says you shouldn't.
Yeah. It all comes back to that oath that they took to keep the conflict between the two brothers within the house. And
Yep.
so this is like generations later, that's what it's turned into, is here's the majority of the house and then the
Mhm.
minority that follows the Iron Road. This tantalizing bit on page 20 where it says they seek to reconstruct the rituals of cold iron that will allow them to set fairy souls on the path of the exodus they seek. I want to know more about those. It sounds like just Dauntainess, but,
Mhm.
you know.
I mean, why cold iron is a long-running question in Changeling. It doesn't
True.
necessarily make sense as the super banal thing out of everything. So
Yeah.
it gets into their house boon, which is you can get possible prophecy futures. So now it gets into
We've talked about prophecy.
yeah. Okay, so you can interpret it with intelligence plus graymare, difficulty 8, and you can bring on a vision by spending a point of willpower and rolling your glamour against a difficulty 11 minus your remembrance score.
Yeah.
So,
At least they get a free dot of remembrance too, though. So
yeah.
that's
So
nice.
they can at least roll a difficulty 10.
Yeah. It's always funny to look back and see these like old math books
Yeah.
where it's like difficulty 13 minus difficulty 9 plus. You're like, wait,
Yeah,
what?
and you're always like, is that what you really wanted to do? That's
If it were 10 minus, it would be fine, I guess.
yeah, it'd be at least 9. Yeah. And the house flaw.
Thaline can smell them.
Yeah. And she, except for House Liam and Fiona, don't like them.
Yeah. The flaw is something which I get it, but to some extent it's very much storyteller's option because the
Yeah.
storyteller can just decide not to have Thaline or Shadowcourt as the antagonist.
Yeah. I mean, that second part's more.
Yeah, maybe that's why it's in there also.
But it's like, they're considered the same as red caps when you get down to it. Among those.
Yeah.
And then we have some merits and flaws. The first is a 4-point flaw, which says everything they've set up so far is written by a narrator that had this 4-point flaw, where you think that fate is inevitable.
Yeah, I kind of like it though because it
Yeah.
creates the opportunity to have like a Cassandra paladin. Like,
Yeah. I don't know if it's worth 4 points or not. Think about that.
yeah, yeah, I'm not sure about the point values.
Yeah.
But like Melody of Days to Come, first, besides being a beautiful name for a merit slash flaw, I like that you're like especially tuned to specific types of visions, which I
Yeah.
really like that as a story hook. These are very story driven merits and flaws
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, that one I like.
The Burning Gaze, though, where it's like you can detect Thaline, I was thinking, aren't Thaline already kind of discernible? Like,
Well, it depends on it. But you can also detect unseelie houses or shadow court.
I suppose that's true, yeah.
And it helps you with disguises a bit.
Yeah. Contrary to the way a lot of the fiction in these books presents it, though, from what I've seen from people playing Unseelie, they seem really content to display their house affiliation, very vividly.
Yeah.
So there's no Baelor masquerading as Dougal in the online games I've seen and whatnot.
I've seen that, I think, once in a LARP.
Okay. It is helpful that they give other common merits and flaws too. I like that.
Yep. And they give their oaths.
Yes. The Oath of the Dark Star, which is their loyalty oath, which if they break it, they get nightmares.
For twice as long as they've served the house. I'm like, that seems kind of...
Yeah.
They just left it as nightmares, I think.
I like that it's an egalitarian oath, though. It's like, she, commoner,
Yeah.
doesn't matter. Y'all swear the same oath.
Yep. An oath where you can swear that you can give the truth.
Yep.
It's like, okay, I'm just going to say the truth and get a point of willpower. And just make sure you don't lie about it.
And if you do lie, you get branded on your
Yeah.
forehead. So
I like their fostering. Make sure that they're actually supposed to be in the house with their fate stuff. Okay, you're good. Let's now teach you what you need to know.
keep a dream journal and then let's sit and talk about it.
None of this like battling 50 warriors in the woods while naked or something like the other houses.
Yeah. Learn some history. You're good.
Yep. And then we get to the biggest theme of this book. Everybody hates House Gwydion.
Yep. And House Baelor as well.
No, there's one house that is kind of meh on House Baelor.
Yeah, they're kind of like, yeah, all right, they're fine, I guess.
But they all hate House Gwydion.
Yeah, Gwydion. But they're, I think it's not so much as they hate Gwydion as they feel so like wounded by how much Gwydion hates them.
Yep.
And of course, obviously, they're bitter for being imprisoned in Arcadia, but
Yeah.
they're like, oh, we wish we still got along.
Okay, maybe this is the most pro Gwydion of all the
Well, they're the Seelie ones, so.
Yeah.
Then Liam, they'd like to reconnect. I did like their take on House Aesin, where it's like, they keep trying to get secrets from us.
Yeah.
Just leave us alone.
They're being too friendly.
Yeah.
In a creepy way.
They're happy that Fiona's pretty chill with them and indifferent to Dougal. They're like, well, they didn't try to defend us and they didn't vote to convict us, to imprison us, so... And they like Scathach, but they wish they had more purpose. They should all be fighting Thalain, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the Unseelie houses,
they just don't like them.
Yep.
Well, they pity Leonin, which, again, is a theme.
Yeah, most of them don't really understand Leonin's flaw, I guess.
Well, that's the thing. They're like, oh, they have such a curse. And, I mean, now in C20, yeah, it's a curse, but it's not, punishable by changeling law.
Yeah, there's no evil. There's not as much of an evil secret to it.
Yeah. Then when we get to some commoners, and again, the First Crusade keeps coming up. It's like, why is this a theme?
Well, they created the Crusade.
I guess so.
I don't know how. Because,
yeah.
Are they like Liam, where they're associated with the church, or what?
I don't know. Anyway, they are super into Boggans. Well, not like into. They just...
Yeah.
Boggans are nice to them, so they like Boggans.
Mm-hmm.
There's an old and tragic enmity with the issue.
Mm-hmm.
Knockers, not much business. They have a Pisky, which seems... I don't know if we can rightly call this a stereotype for...
It's about a Pisky.
Yeah, who is then in the members of note, so... I love that they're pro-Puka. I'm like, yes, finally. She who appreciate the best gift. They are very happy to steer clear of redcaps.
Mm-hmm.
They talk philosophy with satyrs, and they're curious to know more about the Slua, and they have a resurfacing rapport with trolls.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Everybody likes the trolls.
Everybody loves the trolls, yeah.
Yep.
Running theme not only in this book, but all the others. Except for Kithbook Redcap.
They want to get to know the Nunihi better, and they don't like the Thalain.
Not at all.
And then we get, I'm pretty sure, a bunch of characters. I'm pretty sure this would have been like from a chronicle played. Like it reads that way.
When we interviewed Pete for the Shining Host book, I seem to recall him saying that one of the Beaumayn brothers was his character in like a New Orleans set game. So yeah, I think a lot of this is drawn from that. So there are the twins, Jeremy and Brendan, who are the leaders of the house. Remy's a smoke and blues guitarist, and Brendan does the strategy, organization, and computer stuff. So I do like that they have the Principality of Jazz.
Mm-hmm.
They have a history where Lord Vandermeer, the head of the Harbingers of Exodus, who's also in this section and is a stereotypical dark wizard, kidnapped one of them and tried to take over the court as part of a scheme to locate the Iron Road, but they managed to thwart his designs and bring Remy home. And I'm like, yep, that sounds like a chronicle.
This was like after the Harry Potter books kind of started exploding in popularity,
the books, yeah.
Like, or, well, they were.
I mean, who knows when this was actually written, but yeah.
But the Lord Vandermeer, I'm like,
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's enough.
Drawing from the same threads, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, maybe. The other thing is, like, they keep returning to this tiny French village of Marvejols. I don't know if it has some kind of significance in French history. I don't know if Pete Woodworth summered there or something, but it seems to keep coming up. Mm-hmm. But Dame Lillian is a knocker who found the manuscripts with their secret history in that town, and so she has a place of privilege in the house. So I like that there's a Knocker exchange student knight of House Beaumayn.
Yep.
Thomas Magbane, the nemesis of Brendan, and Delphine Ashidu, a Pisky. Good for her.
Then there's 2 treasures.
I like the masker's eyes as like, so they're domino masks that basically allow two-way communication and sharing senses and emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the idea of having those in a ball scene in a story.
This would feel, yeah, the masker's like, that's a cool treasure for a character, but the bracelet makes more sense as like a house treasure to me.
Yeah. They're both kind of random but cute. Like, I don't really see anything that has anything to do with the house in these 2 treasures, but I like them.
Same.
So, overall thoughts on Beaumayn?
I really like Pete.
Okay. All right.
I'm not a fan of this house. I've played it with some of his other stuff, but not this house or the write-up. But
I've never played one, so
yeah, like just from reading this, it makes me not really want to engage with it. But how about you?
I mean, I think it's difficult when you read something that was very clearly somebody's like passion project, and that they're bringing in Easter eggs that like they and their friends will deeply appreciate, but everyone else will be like, oh, okay, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that does kind of tint the text a little bit, but I still like it. I mean, I like that they have sort of their own internal drama so that you can get deep into the house on its own, but then there are connections to the meta plot so that you can like choose how much to get into their intrigues. Also, it's the first French representation that I think we've really seen.
True.
So,
which, if it's supposed to be a place full of should have.
Yeah. I wish we had a little bit more about like their customs, their culture, but I guess because the narrative is so centered on like we were all in prison for 600 years and we just got back, it's like, all right, I guess we don't have to have that. So, yeah.
Well, if you want something about customs and culture, and a lot of on it.
Yeah.
Taking us into the next house, House Aesin, Guardians of the North.
Dum dum dum.
Yeah. So this starts with a story of another split between 2 rival leaders of a house before the sundering.
Siblings, in fact.
Yep.
Again, a recurring theme in this. I wonder if the brief for this was like to each author, they said, okay, make sure that the house was founded by siblings who fought with each other, and they have to be seer warriors and hate the Fomorians.
Yeah. It starts with her like the one who won after winning rips her heart out, causes an explosion.
I like that she throws her heart into the Eye of Balor, though, in the sky. Yeah. That is epic. So,
Yep.
Yes. But it's a battle during the War of the Courts where she slew her brother, and then and in the exchange, almost all of the Seelie Aesin in the house.
Yeah, because she was in Seelie and was sad that they had to fight the Seelie. And then the Norns said, the ancients are gone.
Yep. And by ancients, we mean, I guess, the Tuatha.
Or the Aesir. Or the Vanir.
Well, there is a helpful sidebar that says lexicon, where it says ancients, Tuatha De Danann, Aesir, and Vanes, mortal name for ancients.
Yep.
It's like, okay. Anyway, after the siblings have their fight and both die, and the Norns utter portents, then younger sister Ragnelf comes forward and claims the leadership, turning the War Order of Aesin into a noble house.
Mm-hmm.
I always get bothered in these stories when some of the language is like really anachronistic, where she's like, I suppose we have to change with the times. I'm like, were they really saying that in 1000 BC?
Well, they weren't speaking English either, so.
Yeah.
I mean, they also have something in here about they're using the North terms, and then they say somebody apps something.
Yeah. Then we get a very short history.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's very much these are the Vikings. And I would say the 2 defining traits of Aesin are their Vikingness and the fact that they don't have any patience for like thinking of themselves as Seelie or unseelie. They're like, no, we're Aesin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
gods of the mythic age.
Yeah, they talk about worship as epiphany, basically. That's one of the things.
Wish we had more on that. I mean, I guess that's a straightforward musing threshold, but still.
Maybe. And then we also have At one point, it suggests that House Aesin exiled Allele from.
Yeah. Unclear. Well, so there's the tie-in. They say like, oh, we have memories of an Aelil rebellion in Alfheim, meaning Arcadia, and I assume that's supposed to be a connection to Ertalion and the Immortalized trilogy. But
Okay.
they have a memory of exiling other houses before they returned to Earth to fight the Fomorians because theme. Take a drink. But their purpose currently is to find their missing queen because she has disappeared, put commoners in their place because how dare they think that they can rule, and prepare for Ragnarok. I do like the little note that the warrior Aesir and the sorceress Vanis joined to form the Aesin, and it's like, oh, that's where their name comes from. But yeah. So now that they're back, they resent being stuck in immortal flesh, but they're very fond of nature, so that's nice. They have an extra flaw, which is that they are more vulnerable to true faith.
Yeah, but I don't even know if that is more vulnerable. I think that just might be the effects of true faith.
Yeah. They are led by a 9-person virtue council, which sounds really I don't know how I feel about that name. Maybe it's like taken from a historical thing, but I'm like, that sounds like morality police. I don't know.
Well, no, whenever I hear virtue, I think of like Aristotle, and like it's not what I'd consider morality, but
Maybe, yeah. It just sounds kind of authoritarian and creepy.
yeah.
And then on Vengeance Night, April 30th, Walpurgisnacht, one of their unseelie members from each of their established 5 or 6, I think, occupations sacrifices themselves into fire. And I'm like, how many of them are there that they can afford to keep doing that?
That's my thing too. If you look at how many factions and sub-factions they have and all the roles, and it's like, how, there's so many Aesin to
It's like
have this.
hundreds of them must have come back to Scandinavia all at once.
Well, they also addressed this. Most of them didn't return to Scandinavia. Most of them came to a Concordia, and they're like, "Oh, I guess we're supposed to be in Concordia then."
I wonder where. They're probably North Dakota or something. Minnesota.
With Minnesota, yeah. It's like everyone in Minnesota is now an Aesin.
Are you an unseelie? Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Anyway. And then there's a note about their connection to the Naturai, so the nature spirits who they can talk to. And I was kind of, well, I'll get to it later, but I was like, I thought Varich maybe should have had something with this because he keeps going on about how they rule over the inanime and nature and everything. But
we'll get to that. That is interesting questions for me about the inanime, how they're described there. But yeah, they have a gender roles kind of big deal.
Very normative gender roles.
You're allowed to pick the other role. It's just, not cross-gender occupations. Though not encouraged, neither are such cross-sex attempts actively dissuaded. Okay.
They did walk that back a lot in C20. It was like, they tried that when they arrived, and then they decided, no, just let people do whatever they want.
Also, their whole Fiora thing, when you join the house, do all Aesin start out as childlings? Like, what? In which case, if they've only been back 2 years, like, are they all childlings?
I shrug. All things considered, it did kind of seem fairly tame. Like, okay, you have to survive in a forest for a week.
Yeah.
That's doable.
It just seems weird with the whole, like, they're all children. Like, what? Was this what they did back beforehand? Like, what, is this not talking about, like, when you come as a changeling? Because that's what all that stuff. Anyway.
Well, maybe they came back, and then it's like they're expecting that new members will wake up as childlings or something. I don't know.
Maybe.
Speaking of childlings, though, with the gender norms that are listed here, their women are assigned to be either, I'm going to say this word carefully, waywards, which is an Old Norse word for like a sage or a seer. Anyway, so they can do that, or they can be mothers, or they can be tail-spinning skalds.
But then it says the skalds are usually men.
Usually, but it says they are a crossover occupation. And then it suggests that the Norns, rulers of the Moray and the Dark Ken, stem from Aesin.
I think they're saying that the Aesin actually stem from Moray or Norns.
Oh, true. Oh, sorry, yeah, I misread. Yes. And then the men can be hunters, warriors, or berserkers, which are kind of 3 variants on the same theme, or they can also be skalds. Something else I noticed here in this chapter and the Varich chapter, there's a lot of attention to ethnic appearance.
Yep.
Like, this is uncomfortable. They're like, our men have large muscles, gleaming eyes, and long gold brown hair that falls down their back and upper torso. And it's like, okay, so
Well,
stereotypical Vikings, but
yeah. I'm just thinking about
it's...
my Danish family, and they do not look like that at all.
There you go.
They all look like boggins. That's what my Danish family look like.
Oh, but are they similarly industrious?
Yeah, I'd say so.
With their blazon, they have the owl and the runes of Uruz and Ansus, which I think represent strength and wisdom in like runic divination.
I think it looks nice.
There's a note about how they formerly had the ability to shapeshift into the form of the owl, and I'm like, why wasn't that a merit or something? Like, that'd be awesome.
Yep. And then they get their boon and ban, so they can talk with the animals.
Basically, Primal 1.
Yeah, including like it's banality +3 instead of banality +4. It would have been second edition.
Yeah, but only animals. So
Yeah, forest animals.
Yeah, and then they just have the deep dreaming she flaw, which is kind of boring.
Yeah, well, it's also with mortals they have that flaw, except for their own family.
Yeah.
It's kind of harsh, actually.
They're very blunt,
Yep.
Aesin. And then the oath to join the house. So it gives them 2 dots in the abilities for their occupation, which is not described anywhere. Like, as I'd say, if you're a berserker, you should have these abilities or whatever. But then if they break it, they lose all the dots in those abilities. And I'm like, geez, let's hope it's only 2.
Yeah, I was like, at first I'm like, oh, 2 dots. That's a pretty big deal for an oath. Oh, wait, the penalty. Okay, that's...
Yeah. There's a couple treasures. I guess the bow is kind of cool. It fires arrows that never miss and inflict aggravated damage. And it establishes that their center of power is in the dark forests of Sweden.
Yeah. And then their berserker's armor, it's a level 3 treasure, giving you 5 extra health levels, but it's got a huge price to it.
Yeah, I think probably too high of a price.
Yeah. Like, maybe make it a lower price and a higher point treasure. That would be...
Yeah. A lot of these bits, by the way, I mean, they're just flying by. Like, there's very little depth to a lot of these pieces.
I think you like more depth than me, I think.
I do. Anyway, politics. Here are the 9 virtues.
I guess that's what the Virtue Council is all about, right?
Yep. I wonder if, like, each of them covers one of these.
Wait, how many are in the Virtue Council?
9.
Okay, yeah, so it probably is.
Yeah, there's courage, truth, honor, fidelity, discipline, hospitality, industry, self-reliance, and perseverance. There's another theme running through this book is that honor is individual. So,
yep. And then we get to the court tenets where their Seelie code interpretations is very unseelie, and their unseelie code interpretations very seelie. And it's like, okay, what?
Well, they seem more annoyed by the way the Seelie court puts limits on their own interpretations of their principles than by the principles themselves, which I actually think is an interesting take. I like that.
Yeah, it's like this feels like maybe all of these houses really, if they'd flipped the court on it and just otherwise just done the same kind of spin and be like, yeah, that works just as well.
Which I think points to how Seelie and unseelie should be understood at some points as a political distinction rather than a personal one.
Yep.
More than anything.
But it's a political distinction that has weird personality changes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they have their interpretation of the sheet, and I'm like, oh no, these are unseelie.
Yeah, they're really not into it. I mean,
yeah.
They like safe haven. They like rescue because rescue is like, oh, you can get a boon out of it. And then the rest, they're like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, that's very unseelie, yeah. And they don't like the Shadow Court.
Another running theme.
Yep. Yeah, none of these unseelie houses like the Shadow Court.
Ultimately, it makes me wonder, what are they really standing for? Like, they have a passion and duty to defeat the Fomorians. They have a belief in personal honor and integrity and a belief in their own exceptionalism. But, like, that's all of the houses.
Yeah, they're, like, very crude allele level.
Yeah, and, like, they're not really distinguished by anything except their Norseness. And, I mean, again, much like the Beaumayn are the first French representation, these are the first, like, Viking she that we get. But, yeah. Speaking of the Aelil, though, and the other houses, they are disgusted by Aelil manipulation and by the lies of House Balor.
Yeah, Balor, they're like, yeah, these are just Fomorians. What are you talking about?
Yeah. It says they've had the most conflicts with Beaumayn, and it claims that they're allied to Varich, which is interesting. Or
Yep.
Varich, I'm not sure. They think Daireann are annoying.
Yep. They like Dougal.
And Eiluned. Well, they don't like Eiluned. They just think they're too important to
Yeah.
ignore.
And then they like, oh, Fiona, stop screwing around.
We wish we could respect you. And they would like to work with Gwydion. I mean, for an unseelie house, they're pretty cool on Gwydion.
Yeah.
Pity for Leonin. Contempt for Liam.
Yep. They have more respect for the Autumn Scathach than they do for any non-She noble, which makes it seem like they do not recognize non-She noble at all.
Yeah. I'm curious why, honestly.
Well, they're flaw.
I guess so.
The flaw doesn't apply to any to the Scathach She. So.
Yeah. And then Varich, they, I guess, are okay with them. Yep. They seem to like them.
They're like, oh, we hate all the Aesin. Except for the Moray that they...
Yeah. But, like, again, as unseelie, they seem to be overall really not into any of their fellow unseelie houses except for Varich. And then all of the seelie they're pretty cool with.
Yep.
Except Eiluned, they're, like, suspicious of. So it's...
Which is just showing that they're seelie if you're suspicious of Eiluned.
Right.
Actually, it just shows that you're aware.
Yeah.
And they do not like the Tuatha.
No. I did like the bit when they talk about the Dark Kin that they're aware some of them don't want to serve the Fomorians anymore, and so they're like on the lookout for those who want to like...
Do you know what this reminds me of you more than Vikings? Like the DS9 interpretation of Klingons. I'm surprised they didn't have a story about them going and killing the Tuatha because they were too much trouble. But anyway.
Perhaps so.
Yeah.
But they want the Tuatha to return so that Ragnarok can take place because they want to be the saviors for the ignorant and resentful commoners in Galain.
I'm sure why these Fae are called Galain rather than just as any other commoner. And they like an anime.
Although they'll leave them to Varich rule.
Yep.
Fight the Fomorians. No idea about the Nunnehi.
Maybe we can go at allies, though, so because Nunnehi aren't Galain to them.
And then my favorite paragraph is on page 48 when it has animals listed under prodigals.
Yeah. That should be in the Puka book.
But, well, so, like, there's the note, maybe one day we can harvest dreams from animals as well. I'm like, give me more about that. Don't dangle stuff like that in front of me and then...
Well, they want to try it. Doesn't mean they've pulled it off.
Yeah. They avoid the dead. They don't generally trust mortals, but they collect dreamers like livestock.
Yeah, again, it's like, I guess I can... These are one of those, like... They're very seelie and unseelie, as opposed to some other houses, which are, like, not very unseelie or seelie.
Much like contemporary representations of the Vikings.
Yep.
Apparently they had a gangrel alliance at some point in the past. And we do get mention of the feud with the Geta Fenris, so... Mages, shrug.
Yeah, that's pretty standard. Oh, they're going to experiment on mages.
They are an intriguing threat, so we lure them into dark forests and experiment on them. Don't remember that from the Mage book, but...
Changeling's view on mage is not matching mage at all.
I'm going to file Aesin luring mages into the forest to experiment them in the same folder as the war between Fae and mages in the 1800s in Boston or whatever it was.
Yep. No, just the mages all either died or forgot about it.
Yeah.
We get some examples of their house.
Calm and gentle Queen Ragnelf, who has disappeared.
Then the High Lord.
Meinhilder. She's stern. They seem to be really into headbands.
Yep.
Like
I think somebody had a book on Vikings with headbands.
Yeah, probably. Then there's Jarl Brondolf, who's a solemn warrior prodigy with a destiny, the youngest member ever of the Council of Virtues.
Mm-hmm.
He will be a mediator between the ancients and the Aesin. And then Baron Bjorn.
Wait, the Baron was once a promising wild on the verge of descending into Grump, but the possession of mortal flesh became too much for him to handle. I'm getting confusing thoughts about what the heck aging works like.
What does that mean?
Like, what were they aging in the dreaming? Is that what? I don't know. And then kin by association, the three
the Norns. Ord Verdandi and Skuld. I like the Norns, and I
Mm-hmm.
wish we got more detail about. Well, I wish we got more detail about most of the stuff in here.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like, it's just when we have multiple anti-Fomorian warrior houses with stern tradition mixed with like these
Yep.
elements of grace, like how are they distinguishing themselves? Because so much of this is just like thinly described she stuff, self-important she, but then like a coat of Viking paint on top.
Yeah, that's a distinction. The Viking paint.
Yeah, but even the Viking paint isn't very thick.
No.
So not one ship, not one bear.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
Yep.
I will admit this was my least favorite chapter.
Okay.
I didn't hate it, but
I kind of liked it. It's.
yeah,
I don't think it's my favorite, but it's not.
it's the one that least endeared its house to me.
Mm.
So
Takes us into the next house.
House Daireann, Seasons of Blood. The only house that's cool enough to have title case in their chapter header instead of all uppercase.
So I don't know why, but I keep getting this house and Aesin mixed up in my head. Like details about them. They're not the same at all, but
Well, they're again a house of half
yeah.
warriors, half sorcerers of a particular kind.
Okay, I get them more mixed up than I do with the other three houses in this book.
With their subtitle Seasons of Blood, I can't not read it in the voice of the Rent song. Seasons of Blood. And this is, we have a much more classic, well, stranger, let me tell you all about my house in exchange for your hospitality kind of story.
Yep.
So, and we get a fairly extensive and specific history before we get to the history.
Yep.
This was the Dee McKinney one, right? And I think that she wrote one of the other Book of Houses, like maybe Fiona, and so it resembles that one.
Yep. Oh, this is another. Yeah, let's get into the history, I guess.
Yeah. And this comes right out of Irish myth, all of these people that are being mentioned. You can tell by all the H's.
Mm-hmm.
But very briefly, the Fey Princess Daireann was rejected by Finn McCool, the famous warrior. So she poisoned him to go mad when he dared to court her sister instead. But then she also healed the Fey King Adwirap Gwydion and got a house title out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what you do.
Yeah. Working all the angles. And then her son, Conqueror, who also stayed on Earth, devised the house's fury and laws, which are honor, vengeance, and hospitality, and thereby they established the herbalist warrior dichotomy.
In staying on Earth, you go the long running group of most she houses where the house founder stayed on Earth during the shattering.
One of them in this case.
Yeah.
And of course, honor is individual, not just some rigid code or anything.
Which I'd never seen this rigid code on the Seelie. So I don't know.
Yeah.
They certainly never listed it.
Yeah. There's a bit about how they like to do vengeance. But the hospitality piece, and that's what they've really played up in C20, that notion of like guest rights and host obligations is something that I like as a defining trait.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. These feel very Seelie, these three laws, but...
Well, I mean, vengeance...
Yeah.
The vengeance is usually quick and brutal. They're not the merciful type, which I think makes them more unseelie.
Okay.
And with honor, they sometimes refuse bonds of fealty, which a Seelie would probably clutch their pearls about. But I do think that they are the most Seelie of the unseelie houses, or among the most Seelie.
Yep.
Anyway, then we get the much briefer history bits. They long for the Mythic Age when they were like legendary. During the Sundering, they were battling more and more. I love the note that in the Shattering, they let griffins, lions, and dragons get on the trods to Arcadia to safety first before they did.
Yes.
Save the griffins. I'm going to hope that wasn't like a metaphor for the other houses and that they were actually saving bygones.
That's what I was picturing. Yep.
The interregnum, they don't remember. And they don't remember why they left Arcadia, but now that they're back, they're going to fight off the Fomorians, take a drink, and also put those commoners in their place, because High King David is gone, and surely that's what's causing the commoners to think they can rule things.
We'll get into their house law. I have a theory about this house, that they're actually a Seelie house, but then House Allele convinced them that they're unseelie.
Perhaps.
Because they're the gullible house, too. I love it.
I mean, they're, I wouldn't say they're... I don't know if I would say they're gullible. I think Aesin are gullible. But yeah, maybe. I like the note that they're unsure whether Earth is going to be the battleground that they have to protect, or if it's like the prelude before the fight in Arcadia against the Fomorians. Pressing questions.
Yep. And then we get to their society. And now this is the bit where, like, this feels like a house that's been around in the Autumn world forever from this descriptions. Like,
well, having played an Autumn Daireann in a game online, I support that.
No, but it also just seems like they have all these.
Well, but we specifically do have that one of their founders stayed on Earth.
Yep.
So there is precedent.
Yep.
Can I also just say that page 58 like has the best epigraph and opener, where it's like, first it has the best ancient Celtic curse of all time, which is, may the 7 terriers of hell sit on the spool of your breast and bark in at your soul case. And then it's just the narrators talking about how amazing buffets are. So I mean, I like that madcap kind of narrative turn.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I mean, point taken. Like, it is weird for them to talk about, like, oh, all the years of growing up, when they've been back for probably not even years, plural, according to this book. Also, they're really ableist.
Yeah.
But that's traditional Irish nobility. So.
Well, and they're talking to apparently the Dougal.
To a Dougal. Yeah. So the Dougal's like, and she's like, oh no, sorry if I'm sounding intolerant, but it's like,
this gets into their house flaw, which we'll get to later.
Absolutely. They have a years-long fostering involving training in war arts, tactics, stories and traditions, and at least one craft, which can include herbs and poisoning. And they always send their younglings to another Daireann's hall for training.
Which, again, how long?
Yeah. And how many are there? Right.
Yep.
Although it would be interesting if, like, when they came back, because of the weird wiggly nature of time, they had already been back for 10 years. I would roll with that.
Yep.
The Seining is a fairly minor occasion, but then the Fury is a chimerical combat gauntlet that can last hours to days, facing any challengers who come to fight. And overall, logistics of the upbringing section aside, this is certainly more info about their rearing process than we saw for the first 2 houses.
Yeah. We have their opinion on the Unseelie and Seelie codes.
They're not too keen on honor as a lie. What matters is how you define honor, and that is a completely personal and individual thing.
Yeah.
It's like, all right.
Passion before duty. None of these houses like that. Actually, none of the Unseelie houses, period, like that one.
Which was the one that said, like, our duty is our passion? Was that Aesin?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
But then, like, some of the Seelie ones, I mean, the love conquers all. They're like, yeah, whatever. But then the rest, they're like, oh yeah, death before dishonor, of course.
Never forget a debt, of course.
Of course. Beauty, sure. Ugliness first, but beauty, yeah, we're into beauty. And then, out of all of them, I take back what I said about none of these houses seem into the Shadow Court. They're really into the Shadow Court tenets.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, all of them. I mean, they're very...
This is what I'm saying. And an allele came, like a bunch of allele came to the house and just convinced them to be an Unseelie house and, like, super into the Shadow Court.
Well, they're like opportunistic about it, though. I don't think they're true believers. They're just totally willing to roll with the party, So, yeah, it's interesting.
And then the Ashit.
Rescue and Safe Haven seem like they're 2 primary things that they're into. And Domain.
Yeah.
The others, they're like, well, it's all a matter of nuance.
Rite of Ignorance, they're what? But Rite of Ignorance has always felt like a weird one to me, too. It's like, it explains the setting, but it doesn't explain why anyone would buy into it anyway.
They also say sometimes it's simply impossible, which is doubly true for them because they can't keep their mouths shut. So.
Yep. Then we get some awkward text with images hard to read for Rite of Life.
Yeah,
Rite of Life, they're not for it all. Like, no, we got to kill.
But only in certain circumstances. Then we get their Blazon, which is pretty cool. I like that they contrast theirs with Liam. They're like, oh, Liam's Blazon is a dead tree, but ours is full of life.
This is where I'm one of the ones where I'm really feeling the lack of color.
Yeah.
Glad we got it in color on. I guess we got it on the cover. Yeah.
And then we have the 2E Boon and Ban, which are, forgive me, leaps and bounds cooler than the C20 Boon and Ban. Mm-hmm.
Well, dragons, they couldn't have kept that boon as written.
But they could have still made it battle related in some way. I mean,
Yeah.
they could have done something to turn it around.
But I love their band.
Yeah, no, they're such hot messes, and I love them.
They can't
keep a secret.
Yeah.
The end.
So it's just like, well, that explains this entire thing. Why say way too much?
Yeah.
We get some holiday stuff.
Yeah, they follow the Celtic Wheel of the Year, and it gives little... I like the little details. I did put some of them in Book of Days because I was glad that there were these specifics. I am kind of scratching my head that they used the Welsh names for the solstices and equinoxes because they're very assuredly an Irish house, but
Yeah. I love secret societies.
Yeah, they've got the best.
The first line. No, but the first sentence.
Oh.
You asked me whether House Daireann has any secret societies. I'm not sure what you mean by that.
A secret? What's a secret? Yeah. We've got Belladonna's Chalice, which are the herbalists and poisoners who are mostly women. The Companions of the Oaken Cudgel, who are elite fighters that wield, as the name suggests, cudgels. They exemplify Conchobar's 3 laws, holding honor highest of all. And then the Stewards of Cauldron House, who are the Keepers of Hospitality. Pretty cool.
Yep, get their house oath with a gentle bloodletting.
Yeah. Well, it's like Blood Brotherhood warband thing.
Yeah.
From what I could tell, though, there's no drawback for, like, if you leave your warband behind or something.
Uh-huh.
Like, you get the health level and the willpower point, and they fade at the end of combat, but if you, like, run away like a coward, oh well.
Yeah, although if you took damage, like they point out, at the end of the fight, it could go
Yeah,
bad.
That's true. If you took enough damage for it to matter, then you wouldn't be running anyway, so... Then opinions. Plenty of opinions.
They say that Aesin lacks subtlety.
Right. They're great warriors, but, dumb as posts. Well, no, they don't say dumb as posts. They're just stubborn and one-sided.
Yeah.
They admire Elil.
Yeah, I think Elil talked this guy into that.
They certainly seem willing to let them take the lead on things.
Yeah.
Balor, not at all. They despise them.
Yeah.
Uneasy about House Beaumayn. Although here it is again, like they went to what was once called the Holy Land and learned many tactics of war, which is accurate, historically speaking, but it's like, why are we leaning into this so much?
Yeah. But this must have been... So, yeah, now I'm curious how the writing process went for this, because I thought they were disconnected.
By the time this book was in production, the internet was a thing. So they were presumably emailing each other a bit.
Sure. Maybe there's an IRC.
Then Dougal they count as strong allies for unknown reasons. Mixed opinion on Eiluned.
Hate Fiona.
Lovelorn fools.
They find Gwydion too optimistic.
Yeah. But overall admire them, I guess.
Yeah. They hate Liam.
Scatha are some of the best among the Sidhe, but there's some bad blood. And they're curious about Varich. Is it Varich or Varich? What do you prefer?
I keep flipping when I
Varich.
say it. Okay, how do you say it in Russian?
Well, that's the thing. It's because it's not in Cyrillic. It could be Varich or it could be Varich. So, Varich.
I'm thinking Varich.
All right, Varich.
Varich sounds more likely.
Then here's the sidebar that explains Scatha and Daireann. I mean, long story short, Daireann blabbed about the Yesa that were on Cuchulainn, and that's what got him killed. And he was like the prize of House Scatha, so they resent that.
And then they did it again.
And then they did it again.
In 1346.
Yeah. Right on the cusp of the shattering. Then we get some views on other kiths. Boggans they like, because they know of hospitality.
Ish are too flighty.
Knockers are crude, but useful in war.
They don't like Puka.
No. Redcaps are necessary brutes.
They're not a big fan of satyrs.
Traitorous satyrs.
They like the Slua. I wonder if there's like... It feels sometimes with these stereotypes, it's like, okay, let's flip a coin.
Right.
Whether or not you like or hate the house, and then you come with justification.
Yeah, basically. Except the trolls. You always have to like the trolls.
Yeah. I should do a 16th house that loves all the kith except for the trolls. The trolls.
There you go. They have no clue about the Nunhi and basically no clue about the Inanime, but they let Varich handle them. They avoid the Thalian for their connections to the hated Fomorians. And they fight the Dauntain. They avoid mages. Pity ghosts. Avoid vampires. God, it's like every prodigal in here. Value the mortals.
Actually, at this point, they would have had like... They could have done like hunters.
Yeah, that's true. Werewolves, they have an enmity with Fianna, which I guess makes sense because they.
That'd be funny. It's like, why is this Fae changeling hating us so much? And they're like,
Yeah. The founder was an evil Fae who rejected the amorous attentions of their greatest kinfolk and poisoned him to boot. It's like, yeah, but then he tried to date her sister, so. Anyway, the politics, I'll admit, I was kind of confused. Like,
yeah, I'm very confused. Choosing the Rye and Ben Rye.
so it's title 5, because we get on the next page, we get a sidebar
Yeah.
explaining that. But it's like they're chosen in trial by combat at a challenge issued on a cross-quarter day by an unblemished warrior, but only if the house is not at war. It's like just goes on and on with these details. But the positions are vacant anyway. So
Yeah.
is it supposed to be like an opportunity for players to like, oh, maybe we can be the king and queen of House Daireann? Like,
But there's no one to fight to get it.
yeah. But then on top of that, there is a house leader who's the High Lady who's not in that structure. So it's like,
Yeah.
I wasn't really clear on how that all fit together.
And there's a prince and princess is like a separate level.
Yeah. Well, presumably that's just title 4. Like, I think that's...
No, but none of this for title 4. Title 5 is Duke.
Right, but in the same way that Scathach title doesn't correspond to regular title,
Yeah.
I think this might also be not regular title, but I'm not sure. It's not clearly specified.
Yeah, there's no count either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shrug. Anyway, that could use some clarification. Yeah. But I am quite amused by the bit where it's like political leanings and like anarchists, purists, ritualists. I don't know what all that means. Throw that right out the window. Then some famous faces. Fianach Nistrachen, the High Lady, the Ard Bancharna. I love all the Irish in here. It's great. Probably butchering it, but I like it. And again, it seems like she's been on Earth for a while. So,
yeah.
in her youth, she gained a great deal of fame for slaying a dangerous chimera known as the Hound of the Black Isle, a foul creature that had plagued a Caledonian freehold for many years.
Yeah.
But then the next line is, in our recent days in this world. So it's like, did she slay that chimera 600 years ago? Or
was it in Arcadia? Like what?
Well, no, it says the Caledonian freehold, so presumably
okay.
it's in Scotland. So yeah, I don't know. But I like her as a character.
Yeah.
Then Ioan ap Derith, one of the few men in Belladonna's chalice. Iovar and Chevail, twins in the Companions of the Oakle Cudgel.
At least they're not the leaders of the house.
Yeah. At least they're not fighting each other.
Yeah.
And then Inira Fernician, the token troll warrioress of much repute.
Yep.
I mean, I guess they're all okay. Like, they have stories. They're not like mysterious and obscure founders of the house who are missing. It's like, no, these are people who are actually involved.
You could meet them. Yep.
You could fight with them. They could tell you all their secrets.
And then we get their treasures.
Get a heckin' excellent cudgel.
Yep. It's good at kenning.
Yeah, but it also gives you Oaken Shield and does Strength +4 damage. And, like, I mean, this is pretty awesome. And then the Cauldron that can make a war potion or a sleeping potion.
Oh, is Pris Lenore the one who's having this story set?
It's Sir Hamish who's listening to it and then sending the notes to Princess.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Overall, it is still my favorite chapter in the book because it feels like a rich and mostly complete portrait.
It's definitely my favorite house of the book.
Yeah. And like, they have an identity I can understand in and of themselves. That's not, it's neither tied to a specific culture over, I mean, like, it is rooted in Irish myth, but the Irishness of it isn't like...
It's just in the names, yeah.
It's just in the names and in some of the traditions. But then, like, those aspects of they're obsessed with hospitality, they're berserker warriors. Well, not berserker warriors, those are the Aesin. But they are very fervent warriors. And then the whole inability to keep a secret part. Like, those are interesting character traits that I could see using.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Then we get House Varich. I like the opening art for this one.
Yeah. And it's the other traditional format of... telling about a kith or house, which is the sit by the fire to hear all about your new house, young one. Like,
this story confused me.
It's a lot of story, isn't it? Epic legendary.
The house founder tried to bang a snow lady that was made for...
Right, like as soon as he met her, and then she melted, and then his heart was broken, and he decided never to love again. Which, I mean, it reads like a Russian fairy tale. I'll give it that.
Yeah.
But it kind of ruined things for the rest of them. So
If you actually look up books of fairy tales, like the more anthropological kind,
yeah,
those make really weird stories. Like
yeah,
for any culture.
actionable ones anyway.
Yeah.
And we do also have the Slough in here because we're in Russia.
Yeah, because the Slough are so Russian.
Yep.
Oh, there's one. Okay, this is a little thing. I did some research in rabbit hole. Novgorod.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it talks about how they were worshipped as God and the great gods as the great city of Novgorod. When Novgorod was founded, it was Christian already.
Wah, wah.
Unless there was the Viking settlement of Holmgard that was in the same place. But that's too Aesin. Well, in this part it says, after Fomorian's betrayal, I thought it was a Slough betrayal. Didn't we just have a story about this?
Well, there was also, because after the Slough betrayal, then Marina the Fomorian tried to seduce him in a similar form. Yeah, no, it's confusing.
That was like 30 seconds of time. That's not a betrayal.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a kind of thin excuse for like the house flaw and kind of all over the place. I don't know if it was inspired by a specific story or not, but
yeah, it kind of reads like House Incel at this point.
There is a slight mention that Varich is bisexual though at the start. So
okay,
and I do like that he's the child of the moon and the sun. Like I think that's kind of cool.
Oh, there's definitely things I like about it, but there's some there's some polishing. I think it could have like a lot of this book.
Again, like Aesin and Beaumayn introducing Viking and French, this introduces Slavic for the first time into the canon for the Sidhe, and it does have that vibe of the fairy tales from that part of the world, which I appreciate. It's just it doesn't always lead directly into the frame that they're establishing for the present day very straightforwardly.
Yeah, and this book does present, it's also the whole Novgorod thing, like that it was the capital of a republic.
Yeah. Fast and loose with historical details.
Yeah.
So then the Sundering, they reigned over the wilds and spirits until Christianity came and brought death and destruction and banality, presumably. So they left for Arcadia. But of course, a few stayed. Naturally. Again, we have the sort of seer warrior combo because they see all these patterns and slay beasts.
Yeah. There's an interesting description of Arcadia as exist in the endless thrones of unchanging winter.
That reminds me of you talking about why you don't see winter as banal. Like, it does sound very beautiful. Ice palaces.
Yeah. It also wasn't there stuff in earlier books about like if the autumn world is seelie, the Arcadia must be unseelie, and anyway.
Yeah. So they don't know much about what's been going on during the interregnum, but now that they're back, they're ready to reestablish themselves over their servants, the commoners, recover their dreamers, and complete the pattern and fight the Fomorians in Russia and Central Park and Russian Hill in San Francisco.
Yep.
Feels like kind of a ham-fisted connection to get them into a Concordia game. But, yeah.
Then we get into their boons and ban. Oh, their blazon's like a...
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yep. I like their boon.
Yeah, their boon is cool. It can be really powerful in the right situation, but I would have liked maybe other ways mechanically that they could use it, because I feel like all of this stuff about them seeing patterns everywhere, but the only way it manifests...
It shouldn't be in combat. It should be in competition of any kind.
Well, it includes like dancing or sport, so presumably...
Yeah. I mean, it should also include politics. It should include all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
If it did that, it would probably have to be like a difficulty 1 reduction.
Yeah, that's true.
Rather than 2.
And then they get 2 bans, one of which is they can never give a vow of love to another. That's sure. And then this other one that's not replicated anywhere else about like a horrible challenge bound thing. Like if they're challenged, it's like worse than when the Ishu had that. Like it's...
They must accept, or they will slowly waste away. The loveless thing, I mean...
No, the loveless thing could work, but as written in that particular ban is like, that's nothing. That's...
Right, yeah. It's a little extra ban.
You can't swear an oath. but it's the whole other everything about them, both other people's description of them and their own. Like it seems like it should be like the defining thing of the house, and then it's.
I was just
Yeah.
surprised there was nothing about having some kind of command over nature, because
Yep.
that's so much of their identity.
Well, they have a command over an anime.
Nevertheless, like
Yeah.
they could have incorporated that into the pattern thing somehow. I don't know. And then we get some appearance description again.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
And they get how much they really like. No, this is like my home is my castle.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Yeah, castle doctrine.
Yeah.
They are firmly committed to feudal order.
They don't even seem about feudal order so much as
Well, they believe in Shi's supremacy for sure.
Yeah.
I did like the note about how even though their pattern sense makes them excellent tacticians, it makes them more likely to be caught off guard by the unexpected. I liked that aspect.
Yeah. And if they know, if their opponent knows that, they'll just like, well, I guess I shouldn't give you a chance to sit there and pay attention.
Yeah. It's like playing chess, where it's like doing something completely off the wall can throw your opponent, and then you can like come back with a new strategy.
Mm-hmm.
They have two groups included here. They're the Opteniani, who are the changed ones. They're kind of like the minority voice that like counters the plans of the house and create variations in the pattern. There's the suggestion that they stayed on Earth earlier in the chapter, and their leader seeks Varich's heart, which has been lost to him in his dark wanderings. And then there's the Nochnitsa, who are basically Black Widow from Marvel.
Mm-hmm. Get a bunch of their oath stuff.
Yeah. I dig how their oath of adoption has to be sworn twice under sunlight and moonlight.
And they have their sheet. This is definitely an unseelie house.
Well, I don't know. I mean, they're not into the ignorance one, and they have a creepy take on the right to dream, where they're like, our dreamers belong to us. But the rest of them...
The right to dream? No, that's the duty to dream.
But the rest of them they seem pretty into.
Okay. Yeah.
But yes, I mean, the right to dream one is enough for me to be like,
Yep. They don't kill other she. It doesn't say other fae, other she.
Yeah. Commoners, they'll mow down without a second thought.
Yeah, they're big on the right to rescue. That's good.
Their opinions say that the nobles are rulers by birth. So, she par excellence. Aesin are short-sighted but valuable allies. Seem to have some kinship with Elil.
Oh, this is the one that's not totally anti-Baelor.
Yeah. Cautious, but...
Yeah.
Beaumayn, it's like they're wary, but they admire their courage.
Daireann are like... they're like Red Cap House.
Yeah, throw them into battle. It's fine, whatever. Dougal, they think should be servants.
Yeah, Dougal are excellent commoners. There we go.
Yep. They can't respect Seelie Elened. They're like, when will they just admit to being unseelie? But they admire Fiona, although they're foolish in their passion.
Yeah. They do not like Gwydion.
They do not. They like Leonin even less.
Yep.
And Liam probably least of all.
Yep. And then Scathach, they don't trust them because, like, Beaumayn are, like, too stuck to fate and Scathach aren't enough.
Something like that, yeah.
Varich think they're, like, in the middle, the happy medium.
Which tracks, given the way those houses are written up in this.
Yep. So. Commoners, born to serve.
Yeah. Boggans are helpful when they're obedient. Ishu, they honor them, but they want to be friends.
Yep. Knockers make great toys.
They're pretty pro-Puka, or at least they're not anti-Puka. Yeah. Again, it's couched in that as long as they're loyal servants, we like them. But I guess they like looking for patterns in the way Puka talk.
Yeah. Maybe they can understand Puka a little bit better.
Yeah.
Redcaps, again, just Daireann.
Expendable soldiers.
Yeah. The satyrs, they're very good at parties.
Which they like.
Yep. Slua they hate.
Traitors. They like trolls, take a drink.
This is the one that mentions the lost ones.
Yeah. And Kinane. It's the only one to talk about Kinane later on.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're curious about the lost ones. They destroy Thalain when possible. Galain shrug?
Yeah. And we get a sidebar on the inanime.
Well, all right. Let's talk about this.
My only theory is these are about other phyla in the same kingdoms as the inanime we get in Anime the Secret Way.
I could see that. I could agree with that. Except the domestic ones, It's interesting because when we talked about nymphs in the last recording, I see these as being closer to those and closer to like the genii loci than the sessile ones that like live in trees.
Yeah. Maybe this was written by someone who hadn't had a chance to read an anime the secret way yet.
Maybe. Anyway, they're lost kiths, and I'm into it.
There's also a weird description of their anchors being in the dreaming. I didn't know anchors could do that.
Yeah, and they keeps calling them spirits, which is like, well, wait, hang on, that's something different in World of Darkness cosmology.
Well, in Anime the Secret Way also called them spirits, so.
It's interesting that the Polyvix, the line where it says, "Oh, fertility rites practiced by those who understand the connection between sex and plowing fertile ground." I'm like, that's an interesting
I don't want to go farming with this guy.
Yeah. Importantly, these are not changelings, right? Like, that's the key thing. So whatever they are, whether they fall under the classification of inanime or not, or if there's something else entirely. And I mean, the Domovoi are the ones that we get in the character creation section of C20, so this is technically their first appearance. But yeah, something to sit with. Then the rest of the inanime get a separate section.
So inanime being a bunch of servants to she is just not what any other write-up of an anime.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like there's nothing to justify that from a mechanical sense, certainly. But then, like, yeah, I don't know.
We get some prodigals.
Yes. Stay away from vampires, but yay, Baba Yaga's dead. Mixed opinion on the werewolves. I liked the note that they sometimes seek vengeance on behalf of ghosts. Presumably the ghosts are the ones reaching out, because it's not like the Varich have any kind of way of talking to them.
Yep.
And avoid mages. Mortals, they're like, all right, cool. Pool of servants to draw from.
And then the Kinane, they're like, oh, there's Kinane now. That's cool.
Yeah, I really liked this. I wish the other house write-ups had more about Kinane, because that's a story hook. So I take that. But like, they still kind of consider them just as servile as the rest of the mortals. So it's not like being Kinane gives you much privilege.
Yeah.
Anyway, then we have some treasures. Creations of amber and gold.
They're both amber. Oh, the first two are amber.
Yeah. The amber worm is like a Pokeball.
Yep. The second one, the eyes of the Snow Maiden. So it's one of the two eyes from that first story of like the snow lady that melted. Is like a level 4 treasure that doesn't do. I feel like if it's going to be like that tied to the singular, should be legendary and.
Well, it's singular. It says so. Yeah. But my favorite is the one on the next page, which is the Firebird.
Yep.
I love the Firebird.
And then we get NPCs, the famous and infamous. There's two of them, right?
Yeah. Which one is which? Or are they both supposed to be both?
But I like the house founder, Varich, is actually there, and he's just like, he's taken on like mortal form.
Yeah.
And he's
a professional dancer in San Francisco. Sure. Actually, they're both in San Francisco, because then Irinochka, who leads the Obtenyani, or founded the Obtenyani, is a drummer in a lesbian rock band.
Yep. I guess they came back at Russian Hill, right?
Yeah. Well, she's in the Castro, apparently. But yeah, it's like, these are the founder of the house and the founder of the main sub-society within the house. And it's probably the first time we've ever seen like two legendary characters in the NPC section for one of these.
And they kind of read like somebody's PCs.
Yeah, kind of. Anyway, overall, I'd say it's a decent chapter. I mean, I would have liked to see more detail about the Seelie and Unseelie opinions, especially because, like the other houses, this one really muddies the distinction between the two.
Yeah.
But I like the myth mood, the lore mood. Probably.
I wish the house founder wasn't just so.
He's like hot bad boy, perfect at everything.
I see him as like whiny little mama's boy, kind of.
Yeah, but he's like the perfect warrior, and he's completely beautiful, and he can never love, but now he's a dancer, and he's rich.
Oh my god, he's an anime character.
Yeah, there you go. That's it. He's a waifu.
Yep.
I like Irinochka better, definitely.
Yep.
Then we get to House Scathach.
Which has opening art that... What?
I'm going to guess it was repurposed from Denizens of the Dreaming, and it's like, here's a knight versus two Fomorians.
Okay. So I'm like, did he travel to the Middle East? Like, what's...
Well, given this chapter, it's possible.
Yep.
Which we'll get to. I have a list of things I think Chris Howard researched when writing this chapter.
Yep. This has the most interesting lore implications, this chapter, I think. Like for the what are everything in Changeling.
Yeah.
Starts with a story. Do we need a content warning on this story?
I mean, maybe a content warning. Yeah, like, we don't need to go into details. It is based on a historical event about a massacre during World War II. But the Changeling connection is that a Nazi redcap who was involved gets his comeuppance from a Skaha.
Yeah.
And I think it might be the only piece of fiction that we get which is directly set in the interregnum.
Yep.
Which is kind of interesting.
I thought the fight scene was kind of cool. Like this Skahog where you're fighting tanks and stuff, and like machine guns.
Yeah, do you know what took me right out of it, though?
Yeah.
Is the specificity of almost 69 tons of clanking steel sheared through his legs. It's like such a... So, again, my list of things Chris Howard probably researched begins with World War II armament details, because, like, that's such a specific number.
Yep.
Also, fencing techniques. That also comes up.
Yep. But then there's this prophecy. It's like he's not supposed to die for another 2 months, but
she decides he can die now.
Except for she kind of doesn't, because what she does is she chimerically kills him.
Yeah.
So then he's found all confused and doesn't remember joining the Nazi party or anything, because it's like he only remembers his life before his chrysalis, and then gets killed 2 months later. So by the people they did horrible things to.
Technically, she says, you may leave, little colonel, or die these 2 full months before your allotted time.
Yep.
So in a way, he does leave, chimerically.
Yep.
So
I loved it, though. It's like...
Yeah, no,
I like that take on fate and prophecy.
Yeah. I have thoughts about this house, but I liked it as an opening fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get a variation on the usual narration, in that it's a prisoner recounting her house's story to a grand alliance of Gwydion, Fiona, and Balor, in which we lean deep into the Chris Howard metaplot.
Yep. So one thing in this whole chapter, it's supposed to be, these are the Skahawk that returned, but most of it's still about the Autumn Skahawk, which we already got in the previous book. So.
But it does say that the ones who returned integrated pretty quickly and smoothly into the existing house.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
So, like, they only really differ in terms of their boon and ban and birthright and frailty. Anyway, it's the straight out of Irish myth, Tuatha Fomorian war history stuff again. But in that context, we have the Morrigan, fabled Irish goddess who bore Skaha, the shadowy one. And then she did kind of a fate twist on the Fomorian king Indech and, like, cut off his life early. So is this what you were talking about when you said the implications for lore? Because what I read out of this was when she did that, when she was like, okay, this guy's going to defeat our Tuathan champion, so I'm going to snip his life thread. And then that enabled the Tuatha to win the war. But when the Fomorians fled, it's described as how they took a vital spark with them. And then the Tuatha followed, and then the sundering began.
Yep.
So it's like that act of preventing the Fomorians from winning is what ultimately sundered the Dreaming from the Autumn world. It is an interesting possibility.
Well, it's also stuff we talk about how they're like fighting through stuff we heard described in Denizens of the Dreaming, and then first in Dreams and Nightmares, and then Denizens of the Dreaming. But she's described as one of the Tuatha, Skahawk, which is interesting. Sometimes they're she, sometimes they're Tuatha.
You're talking about Morrigan or Skaha?
Skahawk.
She's maybe like the transitional one.
Yep.
In any case, Morrigan left her behind on the island of Skye, where she was raised by humans, and Fua, who followed the Tuatha rather than the Fomorians.
Yeah, and she's like one of the first to go through the Changeling way, at least among the she. I thought it was cool, like, if she is Tuatha, she's a Tuatha Changeling. Anyway.
Yeah, she's pretty rad. There's a throwaway reference to the Trojan War as well, which I was like, wait, what? But she taught martial arts to Cuchulainn before evolving along with her house into semi-nomadic, fate-twisting warrior types. And it does say that she undertook the Changeling way to gain the insights that mortals are heir to. And then in the War of the Trees, this made it seem like the War of the Trees was quite close to the Shattering in terms of time, which I felt like
that's what I usually see.
Yeah.
The history I've sort of pieced together from this, at least, like, there was multiple wars between, like, the Tuatha and the Fomorians. I got confused by other parts. The War of the Trees was basically mostly according to this, mostly Kithane at that point. The Tuatha had left.
Yeah, but it was still in the dreaming.
Yeah, but it was like the remaining Fae before
Yeah.
the Shattering, the lesser Fae, if you will, that you actually get to play, are fighting the Fomorians at that point.
Yeah, I suppose. It seemed kind of muddy to me, like when exactly it was happening. The culmination of that is that Scathach fights the son of Indech, Octrealach, and I liked that where it's, the two children fighting after her mother got his father killed. It's like they continue the fight, and she ended up basically kind of being bait so that the Fey sorcerers could imprison the White Court in the Forest of Lies and her along with them.
Yep.
There is also the tantalizing note that she had a daughter, Uahach, who had much sorceress talent. She was a Morphean oracle and could shapeshift into a black unicorn, but she and some of her housemates refused the changeling way and departed into the dreaming, presumably looking for the Green Court, which most folks say was a bad idea.
Good thought.
Story hooks.
Yep.
They're here.
But yeah, they have the bidding of the Shattering. With the Fomorian second defeat, the remaining Tuatha De Danann departed for good.
Yeah.
And then a bunch of them got killed by the remaining commoners who were not happy with them.
Nope. A she is still a she.
Yep.
Since the Shattering, they've kept up with Scathach's command to test themselves against banality. There's a note that they made friends with a bunch of prodigals, but then there's no opinions on prodigals later. So,
yeah.
But they protected the Autumn World, and they emphasized freedom, dignity, and change within the human spirit. So they fostered abolitionist movements and revolutions.
Mm-hmm.
There's a note that their oracles foresaw the resurgence down to the hour.
The weird thing about the interregnum for me is they keep going into the dreaming still. I guess they knew some of the pathways still.
It's pretty selfish of them to keep them to themselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, I believe it. Or maybe it's saying the ones who didn't undergo the changeling way, and it's just kind of combining the narratives.
Maybe.
In any case, they were mercenaries in the Accordance War, and...
Well, they called mercenaries. I don't think they were accepting payment. They were doing it for fate plans.
Yeah. They played both sides.
Yeah.
But more recently, they've been preparing for the end times.
Do you know what the 1980s Greens Rebellion was?
The what?
They talk about witness the 1980s Greens Rebellion. I never looked it up.
Oh. I think that's when the Green parties really became a political force in Europe.
Okay.
There was a lot. It's when all the pushback against nuclear power and stuff was happening. Okay. But that's just assumptions. More things Chris Howard researched for this book. Yeah. 1980s European politics. And then the Lost Houses connection is that the Fae who followed Uahach to the Silver Sea are now the ones coming back to shore up their house.
So they're not even coming back from Arcadia.
Presumably not. Although they do have a home in Protea, which is next door to Arcadia. In the heart of the Oniric realms. We get tidbits about their society. They generally don't take titles and reject the core dream of rulership. They were originally Seelie, but they're not really loyal to courts.
Yep.
They obey the Morphean oracles for guidance, which is derived from their close relationship to fate.
Yeah, so this is near the Moray, but not where the Moray.
I assume they all kind of just visit each other for tea.
Yeah. The current oracles include the enigmatic Phantom Talos Perteu, Birog the Lesser, Blue Witch of the
Yeah, I mean, this is just names.
Yeah. No, it's very dreams and nightmares.
Yeah. I like the aspect of time is running out because they've been changing and cheating fate for so long, and now fate's had enough with them. So that's a neat piece. So also, there's a bunch of errata and text that was cut from this book. So in this section, presumably, there was supposed to be a bit about the Red Branch Knights, where the Scathach kind of refused to get involved with them. They helped create it, but then they're no, it needs to be autonomous. We need to not try and influence their destiny. And then there's not a commentary on the Escheat, but there was supposed to be one where they were mostly okay with it, but then they kind of question when other Shi equivocate around the rights of domain and life in particular. They're yeah, stop making it just be whatever you want. So then we also have a page-long sidebar on their meritocracy.
Yeah, this was weird. I don't you have to take... Okay, first, I don't even you have Greymare separately from Dreaming Lore, first of all. It's Changeling or Dreaming Lore.
Yeah. It feels like something that maybe was intended for Noble's The Shining Host, but didn't make it in, so now it's in this book.
Yeah.
This sidebar is what I point to the most when I think of them as what I like to call the Mary Sufi Fate Ninja. Like, they have to be good at everything to advance. They have titles drawn from Sufism for reasons unclear, and their skills are entirely centered around like swift and deadly combat, but then also perceiving the future and changing it. And it's like, give them some flaw somewhere that's more significant than just sometimes they frenzy in battle.
Yeah.
Other houses don't like them much. Like, I don't know.
They feel like weirdly, this whole house we'll get to it later, but they remind me of some stuff in Exalted. Like, it feels like
well, especially the martial arts.
But the timing, neither one could have inspired the other one, I don't think. So it's...
Yeah. I guess it was just in the air in the late 90s.
Yeah.
/ early aughties. Anyway, then we get some opinions.
Yep. Some of these were cut from the book.
Yes. Well, the commoners at least are all in here. So
yeah.
Boggins are the best, but occasionally gossips. Mutual assistance with the issue.
But the thing, along with the slew of Ishu are the least frequently seen changelings. I'm like, what?
Well, you rarely see the same one for long.
Oh.
So,
yep.
Knockers, they have a little bit of appreciation for. Tolerant of Puka. Although it does point out very interestingly here that Autumn Skaha at least can be made to look foolish with cantrips.
Yep.
So they are often the butt of Puka pranks.
They've gotten used to it over the past 600 years.
Yeah. I like the line, they have taught us patience.
Yeah.
It's a very diplomatic way of saying.
They do not like red caps.
Nope.
Satyrs they bang.
Yep. Like everybody else.
Slua.
Useful allies. So are trolls, but differently.
Hey, they like trolls. Wow.
Yeah, imagine that. They have a mixed relationship with their fellow Shi, and then house by house. Well, it says most houses they have an adversarial relationship with, but...
We were once affiliated with this court, and even now most of us are sympathetic to Sealy's sensibilities, but
yeah,
politically they're less in favor.
And they acknowledge that Sealy domination of the Autumn Fae has caused an unhealthy imbalance in the dreaming, one we will soon rectify. And it's like, are they going to go around just killing Sealy Shi?
Probably more subtle than that. But...
Probably, I would hope so. They're not enemies with Beaumayn. They're just kind of like,
yeah.
But they do not like Dougal that much.
Yeah, this is the one who doesn't like Dougal.
Yeah. They acknowledge their skills.
There's too many Baylor spies in Dougal.
News to me, but okay.
No, that's been a long-going thing of Baylor spies.
I guess that's true. Yeah.
I think it's the only other house to figure that out, though.
We have some beautiful art on page 106 of like a Skaha presumably summoning a... I guess this is
That's her daughter. Yeah, it's her daughter turning.
Yeah, transforming in front of a bunch of Firbolg.
Yep.
Unfortunately, this art sidebar covers a number of house opinions that were supposed to be here.
Yeah.
They're okay with Eiluned.
Yeah.
Admire Fiona, but are puzzled by them. And she's talking to a Fiona in this section, so she's like, oh, this is you.
I like the House Gwydion one. How can she, so individually noble and heroic, be so timid and vacillating as a house?
Yeah. Liam, they're into. And then we get to the Unseelie. I like that Aesin is described as the best and worst of the Unseelie.
Yeah.
It's like, yep, even more equivocation from this book. They have a grudging partnership with Aelil.
The Baylor, they do not like at all.
Nope.
They know what the Baylor are.
They've got their long-standing feud with Daireann. Admire Leonin. It's nice to see some pro-Leonin sentiment.
Oh, they're not a fan of Varich.
They're unsettled.
Yeah.
And then...
Why have they encountered so many of the Antine?
I guess because Gaha was raised by the Fua, it says. And, you know, if some number of them were wandering through the dreaming, maybe they were, like, encountering them. Yeah. Presumably the Moray they have a close relationship with. Mm-hmm. And also, Chris Howard wrote Denizens of the Dreaming. So there's that connection.
This is the Moray do not like these guys at all.
Well, yeah, they may not like them, but they have connections with them that the rest of the Shi don't have. Yeah. Like, they actually know who the different Darkkin are.
Yeah.
And then they will stop the Fomorians, no matter what.
Wait, do every one of the houses in here, except for Daireann, have something weird with fate, don't they?
Yeah. That's what I mean. They're all like seer warriors.
Different takes on seer warriors.
Yeah.
And then we get a list of exalted charms that you get in this house.
Yep. Which, like, granted, as far as systems go, I think this one is pretty cool and pretty balanced, even if I don't run much combat.
Running up the lance, I had a problem with. I had a PC take.
Yeah, okay.
Every game I ran, that one
Well,
had
yes,
some problems.
I've never actually used any of these. Just on paper,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay, this is an interesting idea. I particularly like how similar to the in Werewolf, there's the shape shifting martial art, Kailindo.
Yeah.
In this case, there's like certain combinations with particular cantrips or kith powers, and I like that attention to detail.
This is like if you're using World of Darkness combat already,
Right.
and then you
Yeah.
want to bring in supernatural stuff.
Which, different strokes for different folks.
Yeah.
All that being said, I happily would have traded away half of these to get back the parts that were cut.
Yep.
Like, I would have rather had the full set of opinions and the S-cheat opinions than, like, all of these feats. So.
And they don't need musket dueling.
No, probably not. We don't need, on top of everything else that they're excellent at, we don't need to give them gun kata.
Yeah.
So, and then here's the bit about their meritocracy as a background.
Yeah, and there's also all the commoner ones. So, like, if you're a Slua in this, and then if you're a red cap in
that's
this,
what I mean. We don't need 3.5 pages of these feats. So,
but I'm just like, why is there even a red cap? How many? They don't like red caps. Why are there red cap Scathach who developed? Anyway.
Yeah. So then...
So anyway, merits and flaws. Yeah.
Just merits.
Merits. Okay, so...
Which really threw me in. I was like, why doesn't it say merit or flaw? And I'm like, oh, it's just merits. That's why.
Yeah. Oath of the honor-bound allies should be an oath, not a merit.
Yeah, I was confused about that. There is the piece about they can't use sovereign, so this is like a sovereign replacement, but it was just kind of perplexing.
It should be one of those house oaths. It shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Phantom Fate also makes me feel very exalted with the sidereals.
Yes. And these are some expensive merits as well. Do you know, did Chris Howard actually write on Exalted?
I don't know. Actually, this one, the Phantom Fate's actually very close to Exalted the Fairhope Charm, but he didn't write on that book. I know that.
Because Exalted would have been out by this point, right? 2001?
Yeah, it came out. Yeah, well, it would have come out like basically around the same time, which is why I don't think either one can really crib from each other, at least.
An investigation will occur.
Yep.
We have notes here that birthrights and frailties differ. So for the Autumn Skaha, they have only one bonus point of appearance, and they can be made to look foolish. And then because they've undergone the Changeling Way, instead of the Banality's Curse, they have a Blood Madness when they fight.
But the Blood Madness also applies to the... Yeah, actually, the Blood Madness applies to all the Scathach, including the Arcadian ones.
Yeah.
On top of the whole... So they get an extra frailty on top of the house flaw.
Yeah. Their boon is to be silent and efficient warriors, and their ban is that ostracism/sovereign forbiddance, except that the Arcadian ones can use sovereign. There's also the affinity nature here, which I assume is for the changelings.
Yeah. Is this the first time we got Autumn versus Arcadian?
I think so. I was going to say, I think these two pages really informed kind of the Autumn She split in C20.
Yep.
But it's nice to have that kind of social commentary, I guess we could call it, where it like explains how the two sides kind of look at each other. So, yeah.
So what's your thoughts on this house?
It's a rich chapter full of ideas, like all of Chris Howard's work.
Yeah.
But it really kicks up the Seer Warrior theme up to 11. It just...
I think the Scathach martial arts it took up page count, and it's also...
Yeah, it's excessive.
I had a lot of players be like, I want to play House Scathach to get all their superpowers. And I'm like...
Oh, God. Yeah, exactly. No splat should do that.
Yeah, and it was kind of broken. Like you said, it seemed balanced. I did not.
Unfortunate.
Yep. I'm not like some of them were also kind of useless. I mean, this was second ed Changeling, of course it was.
Yeah.
Some were useless and overpriced, and some were underpriced and too powerful. But
yeah, I do feel a little bit better about it, having read the parts that were cut. That does make them feel a little bit more fleshed out rather than just a stack of crunchy bits. But
but it became one of those, like, for a while, like I'm running a game, I'm like, oh, you want to play Scathach?
Get ready to take Dark Fate. That's what they should. Their flaw should be.
Or the No Fate.
Yeah.
Or the Phantom Fate.
Well, they could take both.
And it even says that mortals can take Phantom Fate, but it'd be a 7-point merit.
I would actually... A mortal that had nothing except that one merit would be a really interesting character.
Maybe you convince your ST if you're a mage character. Just don't take entropy.
So then we get some templates.
Yep. Thaline Hunter of House Beaumayn.
This one, again, feels like someone's character has been turned into a template.
Yeah, this is the most PC-ish template character we've gotten ever, I think.
I didn't check the dots this time, but
yeah,
I'm going to guess that one's probably correct.
Yeah. The third millennium that sounded wrong. Yeah, of House Aesin. Volva.
Like
House
Volvo.
Aesin. I love this character.
Do you know, this was written in 2001, but if it were written today, she would be an influencer on Witch Talk, I think.
Yeah.
That's kind of the vibe I get.
But she was someone who was doing like a seance in front of a bunch of people, but then didn't summon a ghost. Summon the she that possessed her.
Womp womp.
But she's like, it's like using her arts to do quackery to get money from people.
It's appropriate that we're recording this on All Souls Day.
Yeah.
Then the modern day herbalist of House Daireann, which is, she's fine. It's rare to see a changeling with 4 dots in science, and I like that.
Yep. All of these, though, okay, the one who's ripping off rich people for whatever, 2 dots resources. Yeah. The successful herbalist, 2 dots of resources.
Well, she's got a lot of student loans.
Okay. Opportunist of House Varich.
This one I found was pretty boring. Because I'm like, isn't this just all of them?
But also, using their amazing powers to get into business, 2 dots of resources.
Yeah, I'm indifferent to this one. The last one is, I like this one more than the other 4 combined, frankly.
Yeah. This one's bonkers.
Yes, the dream alienist. It's like, take Sherlock Holmes, mix him with Mulder, make him a she, and stick him in Changeling Inflected Horror, and then give him awesome art. Yeah. And that's this character.
But like, he's not in the FBI. He's got an FBI badge.
He is, yeah.
He's in the FBI, yeah. But he's wearing that weird robe thing.
Yeah, he's Sherlock Mulder.
Yep.
Solving Dexter crimes.
Why has he got chicanery, though? That's anyway.
Well, it's useful to move unseen.
Soothsay, though.
I really liked that last one.
Yeah.
And then we get the most depressing 2-page spread in all of 2nd edition.
Really, it's the first page that's the most depressing to me.
Well, yeah.
So this is saying in 2001 we get April, the Book of Lost Houses, June, Kith Book issue. I'm not sure if those came out in those months, but and then October, Book of Glamour.
I'm pretty sure Kith Book issue came out either very late 2001 or early 2002.
Okay. This was like very ambitious to get it out.
Yeah.
Although there was a bunch of written for Book of Glamour, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the manuscript was basically done.
Yeah, so it makes sense they think they could get it out in time.
I mean, similarly, Sorcerer's Crusade has an over.
Did the Lands of Mystery, Arabia, India, and Cathay come out?
No, neither did Hosts of Heaven.
Yeah.
And Witches and Pagans was a download only, which I know Terry has talked about on Mage the Podcast. So.
Yep. I don't know Aberrant or Trinity well enough to know what didn't come out.
I think the first Trinity one came out. I don't know about the second.
Yeah.
And the Aberrant, I can't remember how many of those.
Yeah. And then a Ravenloft thing for some... Oh, yeah, they were doing... That's when they started doing... Oh, yeah, this is the D20 boom.
Briefly.
So this is when, for a while, White Wolf was making a whole bunch of, like...
Yeah.
D&D supplements.
Because the open game license had just been approved.
Yep. And then Kith Book issue. Add.
And that is it.
Yeah. So, overall thoughts?
I think every write-up in here is pretty solid. Each of them kind of lacks something, like one thing that all the others have, whether it's merits and flaws or societies or whatever, but I think all of them are decent. In order of preference, I'd probably put them Daireann, Varich, Beaumayn and Scathach. I'm not sure which one I would put above the other, and then Aesin at the end. But even, like I said, Aesin is still fine. It's just, I wanted more. I think they're solid additions, but I always kind of think with new houses, and this goes for like homebrew ones that people make as well, does the house that's being created overlap too much with any other? And one also has to ask, does the identity of the house flow from a source that makes sense? Or does it seem like an ex post facto justification?
Yeah, if you went before Book of Lost Houses came out, and then you took any one of these houses and you asked, does this overlap too much with what's before? I would say no.
Right.
And then we got 5 houses that overlap with each other
Exactly.
too much.
Yeah. They're all kind of variations on a theme, which I guess it's kind of leaning into the meta plot and like, yeah, it makes sense that this is the end times and this is where prophets and warriors would be coming out of the woodwork, but it's still like...
Yeah.
Daireann, I think part of the reason I like them the best is because they're the least like that.
Yep.
They're warriors, but they don't have any kind of like magic skills or, they have some fancy cudgels, but they don't have a whole martial arts system.
And we've already had a whole bunch of warrior she houses, like, beforehand, like, half the Seelie ones. And
yeah.
So, like, it's not a big deal to have Daireann, especially because there's such a different take on it. I love them so much, that house.
Yeah. Well, and the poisoning aspect, I'm like all in on that. But
yeah, it's incongruous in a way that I like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, anyway.
But like the other books of houses, I still think it's suitably deep and helpful enough that a C20 player could still get a lot out of it if they wanted to play a she.
Mechanically, maybe some merits and flaws or something, but like...
Yeah, but that's, all their boons and bans have been updated and whatnot. So we'll have to do kind of a comparative thing when we read through C20.
It's both foundational to what we got in C20 and useful still in C20. Mm-hmm. So that's a good combo.
Yeah, it's one of the better art house offerings, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So
one of the longer ones, that's for sure. Even with the padding they did.
I think page for page there's less white space, and the art I generally don't hate. So
yeah, I just keep thinking, like, imagine if this was back in with the early, like, especially first edition production quality. That would have been... Anyway.
Yeah. So I guess one book left from the original. One full book left. Well, no, 2 full books left. 1 LARP book and 1 tabletop book from the original run.
Yeah, I think the LARP book came out. I have to check the date on that. I think it came out later.
Well, we'll see how the release order goes.
Yep. So yeah, you can find us at changelingthepodcast.com. You can send us an email, podcast@changelingthepodcast.com. Send us a toot, changelingpod@dice.camp. You can go to our Facebook page and check it there and chat with people there. Changeling the Podcast. You can join our Discord, discord.me/CTP. That's become... a lot of people have been joining lately. It's getting very lively. And yeah.
Links will be provided in the show notes.
Yep. And once again, I'm Josh.
I am the recently returned Daireann known as Puka.
If I had to be one of these, I think I'm supposed to be in House Aesin, but I don't really know which thing I'd be. I think I'd rather go... I could go Daireann. I'm half Irish.
You can be anything you want to be. You really can.
Yep.
We note with interest the lack of information about Minnesota in Changeling 20th Anniversary Edition, the only one of the United States to remain curiously and entirely absent from the book. This allows us to maintain our theory that, given the house's implied numbers in Chapter 2 of Book of Lost Houses, the entire human population of the state has been displaced, possessed, if you will, by these Alfar. Further evidence, the ducal seat has been moved to High Falls on the border of the Kingdom of Northern Ice, Minneapolis has been renamed Wattensbier, and the Minnesota Nice culture has been replaced by duels to the death and the ritual of the Blood Eagle. We're planning accordingly for our fact-finding mission to the Upper Midwest, made possible by the support of our patrons. Derek, Dorcadus, Oreo, Razcaboose, Sandjigger, Sija, Terry Robinson, and Tri Sarabeth. You too can support our show by signing up for Patreon at www.patreon.com/changelingthepodcast. It's also helpful if you leave a review of our show on the listening platform of your greatest convenience. If you liked this episode, feel free to tell others about it, and do drop by our Discord to have a chat by visiting www.discord.me/ctp. That's all for now, so watch out for those gates to Arcadia, because they seem to just keep opening. And until next time, keep on dreaming.